So welcome everybody to the Ella Johnson presentation on resume and LinkedIn. Today we have Eliana Maligas, and she has been in the professional world for many years, working in several different roles, including business development and project and program management. She has helped people at many stages of their journey, from start to mid-level of their career, and those looking to change careers. Her goal is to help you feel more confident with your experience and skills and land that first interview. She is here to help you give the knowledge she's acquired. She is here to help give you the knowledge she's acquired and how to optimize your resume and utilize your LinkedIn profile. So welcome, Eliana.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Jen, and welcome. So for those who are watching the recording, hello. And for those who are in the room, Kevin, I see you there. So good to have you. Thank you for joining, taking the evening out to be here. This is really important. And I know that it can be also very stressful at the same time. So I really appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to make sure. Perfect. So a little bit about me. Jen already kind of summed it up, but currently I am based in Chicago. Like she mentioned, I have worked in roles from business development, project management, program management. So I've kind of seen different kind of roles and how they interact with each other, how they're different, as well as having to really be on the recruiting side of that too, see how to have to change my resume, how to speak with people in the hiring process. And so, I'm really excited to be here because I want to share everything that I've learned. I'm really passionate about helping people. I do this a lot of times just with friends, family, and then also in a professional world. But, it is my passion to help other people because, like I said, it can be very daunting. Doing your resume, doing LinkedIn can be very difficult. Getting a job can be very difficult. And so I'm here to try to help you, ease that worry and prepare you as much as I possibly can with the knowledge that I've acquired. So with that, for tonight, our agenda, we're going to start off with kind of the why, right? So why do we need to bother making a resume? Why do we need to bother making a LinkedIn? You're probably familiar with both. You probably already have a resume, maybe you have a LinkedIn, but I think understanding why it's so important is a big piece. We'll talk about what the resume looks like. We'll actually walk through a resume. So I'll go through a sample of that and I'll go through all the sections. I'll give you some best practices for that. We'll also go through a couple examples of cover letters. I'll also walk you through LinkedIn, and I'll try to show you how to create your account, but then also how to optimize your account so that it looks great and it really showcases your experience. And that'll be a part of the takeaways and tips. Of course, if there's any questions or anything, please put them in the chat. If you have, any comments, I might ask a question. So feel free to respond either to the chat or get off mic and say it out loud. Cool. Awesome. So first things first, why do we need a resume in LinkedIn? So just like this picture here, right? What's your biggest weakness? I'm too awesome, right? You are awesome. So with being awesome comes with having to really show people who you are, what you do. And so your resume and your LinkedIn is exactly that. It's a way for employers to get to know you. It's the first impression that they're going to see. So when you apply for that job, or if you get a referral and you're sending in your resume, it's the only way they're going to get to know you and see who you are and what you're about. And it's a very concise way of doing so, right? So obviously my resume is not everything that I'm doing in my day-to-day, and it's not who I am on the weekend, and it's not all these things, but it is going to showcase the professional that I am, the things that I've done in the past, as well as what I can do in the future. And it's designed to help you land that first interview. So it's super important that your resume is optimized so that it's actually read. And so there is something called the applicant tracking system. So this system is used by many, many companies, probably all of them, in order to kind of weed out resumes. So you always hear the term like, oh, I'm applying, and there are several stages in the recruitment process of that resume and who it's actually being seen by. So the first stage is usually an applicant tracking system. So what it does is it scans the resume for keywords and certain things that it's looking for relative to the job post and with the company. And so it's very important that your resume contains these particular keywords so that it actually gets through that initial kind of filter into the eyes of a recruiter. So I hope that that makes sense. But as you can imagine, there are thousands and thousands of interviews, going through this system all the time. And so it's really important that, your resume gets through that initial filter. And then of course, LinkedIn, it's the same deal. So at this point, we all kind of have a digital presence at this point, or at least we are trying to move that way. Employers are increasingly on LinkedIn. People are constantly, searching for folks online. And so with that increase of online activity comes also the professional world becoming more digital as well. And a lot of networking is happening through LinkedIn. We'll get into that later on. But again, it's all part of this sort of digital profile that you're going to need to really work on, so that way you're noticed and that you are seen in the market. Cool. So getting started. So depending on the role that you're doing, you'll really want to think about sort of where you've been and where you want to go. So if you're a career changer, maybe you're somebody that's looking to get into a new field, but you've already been working for several years, that's going to require a different type of resume than somebody who has never worked before, or potentially is just starting off their career and they're looking for maybe their first job. So you really want to think about, okay, what stage am I in my career? What am I looking to do next? And so that's going to really guide you into how you're going to structure your resume. So at a base level, your resume should really showcase your work experience, your education, any certifications that you have, awards, any languages that you speak, as well as any top skills that you want to showcase. If anyone's comfortable either shouting it out or putting in the chat, are you currently looking for a role? And if so, what stage do you feel like you're at in the process? And feel free to put that in the chat or shout it out. So let me know if you are in the process, and then as well as maybe, how many years of experience you're kind of looking at or that you have. Awesome. Awesome. All right, great. So in the process for the future, 20 years of experience. Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, lots of experience in the room here. And exactly, looking to advance. Perfect. Perfect. And in graduate school. Yeah, so this is pretty typical. I think a lot of people, they're working in a field for a really long time, but because they're in the field for so long, maybe they're in the same role, or maybe they're in the same industry, and then they need to like reskill, right? Or kind of revamp their resume, try to show their transferable skills to this new industry or maybe this new employer, because you might not have exactly the experience that new employer is looking for, but you have so many years of experience to offer. And so, yes, that will definitely play a role into the kind of resume that you'll create. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so now we're going to move into the presentation of where I actually show you a resume. So I'm going to actually start from the beginning. There's two ways to really create a resume that I would recommend. So the first would be through Microsoft Word. So you would go to Microsoft Word and you would go ahead and create a resume from a template. So if you go to a blank template here, this is how it will look, but then you can go and create a new from template. And so when you do that, you're going to open up, there's going to be a ton of options there for resumes. I'm not going to open that one because I actually have a Google Drive one to show you, but the number one thing I can say for resume building is to use a template, because if you try to create the format for a resume on your own, it's going to be very, very laborious and you really don't have to do it. There's a lot of templates out there that you can use. For today's example, though, I'm going to show you through Google Drive. So if you're in your Google, let's say you have Gmail, for example, you're going to go ahead and create a Google Doc and you're going to go ahead and choose from a template. And then you're going to go ahead and pick, there's a lot of options. Like I said, the same thing will be there for you in Microsoft Word, but you can go ahead and choose a template here. So for an example, I'm just going to show you what it would look like when it's all completed. So after you do the template and you fill out your information, I actually want to show you what a completed resume will look like. And we'll go through each section here, because if I actually sit here and type it out, you'll be bored to death and you'll be like, I don't want to see that. So here's an example. All right. So first things first, let's just say I went through Google and I created it from a template. And so here it is. I have filled out the information and we're going to go through each section here piece by piece and break it down. So as you can see at the top, right, I have the person's name here, as well as any certification titles they may have. So this person is certified. They are certified Scrum Master, abbreviated SCSM. They are a certified associate in project management. They've included these titles. They've included their location. So they've only put the city here. That's a big point that I'd like to mention, is that you do not need to put your address or even your zip code. You can just put the city that you're in. City is great because if you're applying for a role in that particular city, it will again go through that filter and it will filter to your resume if they're looking for somebody in that location. So definitely keep your city on there. Phone number, email, LinkedIn. Okay, so this is the main contact info that you really want to include right there at the top. Okay, so moving on, this section here. Okay, so this person is a project manager at Google. Again, this is an example. You may have a very different title, a very different company here. But what you want to do every time you apply for a role, you want to actually change this to match the title of the role as well as the company. Okay, and the reason you want to do this is because you want to give recruiters the opportunity to see what it would look like if you worked there and you were in that role. Okay, so, and I'm sorry, this formatting, I think the line just completely disappeared on me. Don't know what just happened there. There we go. And you want to give the recruiter a chance to see you, kind of visualize you in the role. And then here at the top, you're going to go ahead and put a description of the kind of professional that you are, right? So the keywords here, though, are going to be accomplished professional, right? Motivational leader. Okay. Build stakeholder relationships. Out of the box thinker. All right. Exceeds all expectations. Okay. Notice that these are all really at a high level showing what kind of professional am I? But it's also telling you like the way I think, right? And what kind of leader I am, what kind of person I am, and how that shows through my professional experience. So at a high level, you want to talk about, think about your experience that you have and consolidate it into at a high level, what kind of professional am I? What kind of value have I brought to my organization so far? And what do I want this employer to know about me right away? Okay. Skills and expertise. This section is going to highlight your top skills. Okay. So this is very important for, again, that applicant tracking system that we talked about. Very important because, again, that system is going to literally highlight these keywords and it's going to pull your resume and separate your resume from the rest if it has particular keywords that they're looking for. So the same thing with the top here, how we kind of changed it to match the employer. We also want to change these keywords to match what the job description is asking for. So for an example, this individual, if they're applying for a project management role or a product manager role, that's why they have these keywords here. And you're going to want to do the same thing. So if you're applying for software engineer, right? You want to put software engineering as a keyword. You want to put any type of specific skills in the keyword section that are also in the job description. Okay, so a lot of people, they may not do that. It might be a little more work, but like I said, once you have this template and it's ready to go, typically it's usually just changing this part and then maybe making a couple changes to the keywords. So it shouldn't be a lot of heavy lifting once you have the template. Okay, so you want to make sure you're keeping these keywords here and you're including them. Any questions on this before I continue on? You can either shout them out or put them in the chat.
So if you aren't a project manager or haven't been, but you want to apply for something different, you might have the skill. You must have the skill from past jobs, but that wasn't your title. It's okay to put that in there.
Yes, I would say yes, it is. My rule of thumb though on that is that if you're going to put it in the resume, even if your title doesn't say project manager, but you've done project management and you know that you have, I would say just make sure that when you have talking points on the work that you did to showcase the project management that you did, right? So let's just say you weren't a project manager in your title, but you did project management. Please go ahead and put that in the keywords. But then within your experience, which we'll get to, you want to show specific examples of what you did that shows that you project managed. Does that make sense? So like, because if you go on an interview, right, and they're like, well, it says project management, but like, what did you do? You want to be able to speak to that. You want to be able to speak to, okay, here are the types of things that I did. So I did do project management. I didn't have the title, but these activities and tasks that I completed fall under project management work. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Of course, yeah. So, and it's so hard because I think a lot of people are in that same boat where they might have been doing a ton of different, like even jobs within their job, right? Or like a lot of different skills, but the title doesn't necessarily reflect that, but they know they did the work. So yes, I would say 100% put those skills in your keywords. But we're gonna jump down to the experience now, and I think this is where this will probably help a little bit more give context into that situation too. Cool. So yeah, let's move into the professional experience now. So this person worked at Google. Again, this is just for example purposes. You might not have worked at Google, which is totally cool. I haven't worked there either. You're going to go ahead and list your experience. Now there's two ways to do this, and we'll talk about this after when it comes to formatting. But this person, for example, is putting their experience in chronological order. So they're putting the most recent experience first, and then they're going backwards. Okay. So I recommend that when you have experience that's, directly after each other, but we're going to go into formatting after. But that's how they listed it out here. So their experience as a project manager started in 2021 to present. And then these are the specific points of experience that they had. So they orchestrated programs. Okay. They launched new programs while balancing competing requirements. They coordinated the setup of these particular areas. They acted as a liaison. And I'm only highlighting these because I want you to really see how to kind of start it. The rest is very specific to your role, but you want to really use words that show action. Okay, if there's one thing you take away from this is you're showing an action, okay, like what you actually did. It's very important versus like, I was responsible for this, right? You want to show, I actually did this. I did this. I did it every day. You want to talk about what you did versus what you were just responsible for or anything that can be left to guess. Okay. So I acted as a primary liaison. I orchestrated programs. I standardized and streamlined reporting processes. Remedied time-sensitive gaps. I enhanced communication channels. I managed, right? These are all action words. They basically tell the employer, I did this, okay? So very important there. Same thing with this experience. They created, they excelled, they led, okay? So just really highlighting what you actually did. Another thing to keep in mind is using a past tense. I actually used to make this mistake where I would do everything in the present tense, but you want to use the past tense always because it shows that you did that already in the past. Even if you're currently doing it in your current role, it's a general rule of thumb to just use the past tense, okay? And then this person also has some additional experience here. They didn't list it because it's a little bit farther out, which is fine, but we're going to get to this in a second. And then they listed their education and training. Okay, so their education here, you do not need to put a date for when you completed a degree unless it's in progress. All right, so you do not need to do that. If you got your degree, 20 years ago, you do not need to put a date there. You can just put the degree that you've had and where it's from. All right. Same with the other education that you may have. So if you have any additional certifications that you earned, whatever those are, you do not need to put the dates there unless they're in progress. So if you're currently working on those certifications and they're not completed yet, then definitely put the date that you started and the date that you assume to complete them, but you do not need to add the dates there. And then moving on to any technical skills that you may have. All right. So if you have technical skills, even if this is not like computer skill set. So I have a Microsoft Office here, Jira, Confluence. These are, very specific skills within a software system, but, you might have, I don't know, like just very specific technical skills. Maybe you're skilled in mathematics, or maybe you're skilled in the lab or something, right? Like, I don't know exactly what experience you may have, but any kind of additional skills that you have are important to list here. So, these are your top skills and expertise that you're actually looking, with your next role to, the kind of skills that you're looking to work in your next role. But then these are your technical skills. So what kind of software do you have familiarity using? What kind of other skills, did you not list up here that you can put here, okay? And this includes like tools, things like that. So Salesforce, Monday, if you're a project manager, all of that. Okay, honors and awards. So same thing, any honors, awards that you received. This person put that, when they were working at Walmart, they got some awards here. Community engagement, AKA volunteer experience. So definitely include that on your resume. And then something that I also recently in the past couple of years saw in my experience that people were adding are their interests. All right. So for some of you, this might be brand new. You might never have put your interests on a resume before. All right. Nowadays, this is actually really important to include on your resume. You want to tell the recruiter what kind of person you are outside of work. All right. What do you like to do? So this person, for example, they're really into health and wellness. They're really into music. They're into travel. They're into reading. And another reason that you want to include this is because, for example, if you're applying to a company that, let's just say they're a travel company, right? Maybe you're applying for a project manager role and for a travel agency or something like that. That's important to know that you also are really interested in travel, and that's something that you did or that you really like, and that will really help you stand out against the competition if you have a genuine interest in what the company does, and you have a passion for it. All right, so I'm going to pause there. I just went over a lot of information. Any questions on that? And I will also mention really quick, it is important to keep your resume if you are between like an early to mid-career, one to 2 pages max. Even if you have a lot of experience, like many years, if it's kind of in the same field, then you'll want to try to keep that resume to 1 to 2 pages as well. The longer it goes, again, it's good if you're more of an executive level. If you're at a higher level, you can go ahead and list more pages, but it's highly recommended that you keep your resume to no more than 1 to 2 pages as a general rule of thumb. So I will stop there. Any questions, anything at all?
So is 2 pages like really too long? Like I have a lot of job experience. I have a lot of work experience, but I mean, I don't want to go all the way back to when I was 16. They don't need to know my first fast food job. So
exactly,
I only put the jobs that apply, that would have some of the skills in them that they are looking for. And then what happens if that means that there's gaps in between? Like,
right.
I
Great.
took time off to, also, if you take time off to have kids or whatever, they see a gap, that kind of thing.
Great question. Great question. So Yes, the first part of your question is about what you actually list on your resume and relevant experience, relevant. So with what relevant in this case means is that the work that I did in that role has relevancy to the work that I want to do for my next job, right? So if I'm, like you said, I'm the same way. I've had jobs where I worked at Starbucks. I worked at like so many different places. And as great as that experience was, and as much as I feel like, there's things that I learned there that apply today, it's not necessarily directly relative to the experience that I want in my next role. I specifically would want to find roles. For example, if I'm a project manager, I just want to find the experience that I have and showcase the experience that I have that focuses on those skill sets specifically. So if there's something that you're not sure about and you feel like, okay, this experience, it's great, but it doesn't really have a lot of relevancy to the role that I want, take it out. Or you can do what this person did too. For example, in this, this person put additional experience here. They didn't list out what the experience was. They just put the title. And you can see from just the title, right? Program manager, operations coordinator. It's probably similar or relevant to this, but even then they didn't want to list it because they felt that this experience was the most important to highlight as it's the most recent and it's the most relevant to the roles that they're applying for. And then to answer your other question about gaps, that's totally okay. If there are gaps, that is not something that you have to explain in your resume. If an employer is curious about that, they can absolutely reach out and ask you there. That's something that you can explain in your cover letter, and we can get to that later. But I would say the most relevant experience that you have and the most recent, I wouldn't go back any more than 10 years with your experience as a general rule of thumb. Again, if you have 20 years of progressive relevant experience, that's a little different, but I wouldn't try to pull as much as you can from every single job. I'd go the other way and say, okay, what is the most relevant for my future here of what I really want? And what kind of specific examples in my past can I pull from to create that perfect resume? Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Of course, of course. Yeah. And there's plenty, like with gaps, I know that's a common concern. But once you're applying for roles, you can, if they do ask for a cover letter and things like that, you can talk about that, but you don't really need to mention that, especially if you're keeping your experience very relevant to the industry. Don't worry about it. Cool. Any other questions on the resume before we move on? No? Okay, cool. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the presentation. Oh, that's not it. Sorry, I'm seeing different screens here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so best practices for the resume. I kind of went into this a little bit, but just at a high level here, format truly does matter. I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow again. Cool. So format really does matter. Okay. So proper spelling and grammar, indentation, the font size and type that you use. If you are using a template, you really don't have to worry about the font size and the indentation. That will really be covered by the template. But you also want to double check extensively for grammar and spelling errors. All right. These recruiters, people have a very limited time to look at your resume. So not that it's going to make you any less of a great candidate if you have an error, but it just shows that you're very detail oriented if you go through and really make sure that you don't have any of these errors. Okay, grammar, spelling. So definitely go through that. And then this is what I was talking about with the resume before about chronological versus functional. Okay, so chronological is when you have years of related experience. So what we just saw was chronological. That person had several years, probably a few years of related experience. So it was kind of similar. It was related to the role that they're looking to apply for, and it kind of tied together nicely. All right, versus functional, which is if you are a high-level executive or you have, I think we just talked about this, many, many years of experience, you can list your experience in a functional format, which focuses more on skills and abilities rather than dates. Okay, and that's where you can list very specific skills and projects that you've worked on in those particular roles. All right. But I will also caveat that and say that, your job at Target, 15 years ago, if it's not directly related to the job that you want to do, don't include it. Okay. So this is for experience that, maybe you worked on a specific project in the past that is really relevant to like project management. Include that there, include that project that you did, include the, maybe the money that you earn, the profit that you earn for the company, the numbers. Okay. Include numbers. That's another huge thing. Include numbers in your resume. So anything that you can say, percentages, specific numbers, include that. All right. Very important. Okay, file types. So a Word or Google document. When you actually save your resume, you want to save it as a Word doc. And you also want to apply with a Word document. Okay, so you don't want to upload it really as a PDF for the same reason that I said before, of that these applicant tracking systems, they can read Microsoft Word files better. So definitely upload your resume as a Word doc. And then now we're also going to go into cover letters a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on cover letters because they're very specific to the industry and they're they're not even needed sometimes by all employers. So if you want to be like this lady and be very upset that the job is asking you for a cover letter, you can do that, or you can create a cover letter, a template, and then you can make changes to it. And so it doesn't mean that you can't apply to the job. Okay, cover letters are not all that scary. I'm going to show you a few examples here before we move on. So let me actually go ahead and click here, just in the interest of time. So I just pulled some examples here, and I'm just going to quickly go through it. I don't think again, cover letters are very specific and not every company needs them, but I want to highlight this one really quick. So hopefully you all can see my screen still. But I want to highlight this one because I think it has some really great information on it. For example, the cover letter, you've probably seen one before. And if you haven't, again, you can see tons of examples. But on the top right, you have your information, your contact information. At the left, you have the company information. You don't have to put the address. You can just put the company name. If you know the name of the recruiter, you can put their name there. And it's structured kind of like you're writing a letter, right? So dear, I would say hiring committee is the best way to start it. And you're going to go through, again, similar to the resume in the sense that, you're talking about the kind of professional that you are, right? If you have 20 years of experience, I have a proven track record of, and list out those specific skills. But the most important thing that I want to emphasize here are these bullet points in the cover letter. All right. So when you send a cover letter in, that recruiter is taking a glance and they just want to see what they want to see very quickly. And that's it. So in these bullet points, you want to talk about the value that you bring to the company. Okay. Here's exactly what I'm going to bring to this organization. Here's what I've already done, right? At a very, very high level. Okay. This is where you want to show your stuff and pick the best of the best top skill set out of your resume and experience to put in the cover letter. Because they're going to look at the cover letter first, and then that's going to help them determine if they want to look at your resume. Okay. So put that top experience here. You can end with any educational experience that you may have, as well as any very relevant, volunteer experience, et cetera. And then ask them, or I look forward to really speaking with you and thank you for your consideration. Okay. Any questions on cover letters? I know I'm going through it a little bit quicker, but I don't want to go through it too much because again, it's very specific, but any questions on cover letters? Cool. All right. Awesome. So moving on, let's go ahead and go back here. Okay, moving on, guys, to LinkedIn. All right, so I'm actually just going to leave this here because I'm going to open up another window in a moment. So LinkedIn. All right, I'm sure you all have heard of LinkedIn. Maybe you have a profile, maybe you don't. But LinkedIn is more than a networking site. Okay, right? It was notoriously used as a networking site, especially in the beginning. Somebody who just wants to show their professional experience, and maybe network a little bit, but it has grown immensely and it has become kind of a beast on its own. And so it's pretty much your digital presence in an increasingly digital job market. Okay. So I'm sure with the, with the pandemic and all these different things that happened, you saw that there was a mass increase of work from home jobs. There was a mass increase of sort of the digital wave of work. And with that, LinkedIn, I think, became even more popular at that point. And so it is used for recruiting new hires. Recruiters are on there and they're actually reaching out to folks on LinkedIn for interviews. It's also used by recruiters to learn more about you as an applicant too, so they can see, more about you at a high level. It's used for networking. So you can reach out to folks on LinkedIn for various different reasons. I actually have a specific example I'd love to share with you. When I was considering a different job, a different industry, I wasn't sure about how I would like it. I was actually interested in moving into healthcare management, and I had no idea about the field. I didn't really know what to expect. I was coming from a different industry, and I reached out to some people on LinkedIn who were in a specific role that I was curious about. So I think it was like the VP of a hospital who had a degree. So I'll back up. I was considering a master's program, right, for a specific career. And I was curious if people with that same master's program, if I could talk to them, right? Because people who are in the field, working in the field, if I could like pick their brain a little bit on what they thought about the role and what their thoughts were. So I reached out to many people on LinkedIn and I got some responses back. And I actually spoke with someone who was like a top level executive in this hospital, who had the same master's program that I was considering, who had years of experience in the field. And we had like a 30-minute conversation on the phone. And they were able to tell me so much about their role. They were able to tell me, I went in prepared with questions that I wanted to ask them about the role. And they were able to answer all my questions. And they were so excited to talk to me. They were happy to talk to me about it. They gave me the ins and outs, what they did and didn't like. And so I would never, ever, ever have had that opportunity if I didn't have LinkedIn. All right. I would never be able to find this person just anywhere else. And I think a lot of you can agree that, that kind of visibility and that kind of community and connection is enhanced by having LinkedIn and being able to communicate with people on there. Okay. Just out of curiosity, everyone here, do you have a LinkedIn? You can just put yes or no in the chat. Yes. Awesome. Perfect. Cool. So a lot of this you probably already know then, but I still think it's good to go through it and also optimize our LinkedIn. Okay. Perfect. So let's go ahead, since we already know how to kind of create the profile. I think creating it is pretty straightforward. When you get to the LinkedIn profile, you click create account, and I don't use it much. Okay, cool. So this is going to be great for you because we're going to actually talk more about using it. So let's go ahead and open LinkedIn first and foremost. So you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff here because this is my personal LinkedIn profile. I'm going to go ahead and hide my messages there. There really shouldn't be anything here that's that crazy. But here we go. Okay. Can everyone see this? Maybe give me a thumbs up. I'm sure you can see it fine, but just in case, let me know if not. So here's LinkedIn. All right. I'm going to go ahead and show my profile on LinkedIn. So when you open it up, okay, it's pretty straightforward. You have your feed, you have options to post here, and I'm going to go to the profile because that's where we're going to put most of our time here. Okay, so here we go. Here's my LinkedIn profile. I'll start at the top. You have an opportunity here to put a cover photo at the top. I recommend keeping this pretty basic, pretty professional. I think mine is a typical LinkedIn one that they offer. Next is your picture. All right, so here's my picture. I took this. I tried to have a really pretty backdrop and I tried to be, very professional. I recommend the same thing for you. I actually would recommend that you keep a plain background for your photo. So if you have a professional headshot that's just like a plain white, plain background, highly recommend that you use that. Although any professional photo is fine. Moving on here to the title. So you want to go ahead and put your current role and the current company that you work for. Okay. This is very important because at a glance, people are going to see what you do. I also, in this section, if you have a lot of experience, like over 20 years of experience, you can really put a lot here. All right. You want to put that you're a thoughtful leader. If you're, for example, if you're software engineering, right? I'm a software engineering leader. I am, you want to refer to yourself a little bit differently than just kind of your role in company. Okay. You want to, again, showcase yourself as the top of the top. Okay. So this is the time to really brag about yourself. Okay. Your LinkedIn is the time to brag about yourself. Okay. So don't feel like you have to be humble. You are the best and you want to show that you're the best. Right. So moving on here, I'm going to just go down to the most important sections of LinkedIn. Your about section is very important. Okay. This is your number one place at a glance where people are going to see the skills that you have. Okay. Dedicated professional, same thing. We're using the same keywords here. We're talking about the different education experience that I have, the specialization that I have, the highlights of my career. All right. This is similar to what was in the cover letter. Okay. You're going to put the highlights. Okay. The top things that you want this employer to know about you. It's a little bit different than the cover letter though, on the resume, because we're talking in the first person, right? We're saying that this is what I did. And I'm only including 4 bullet points here. Okay. And again, the most relevant bullet points that I have. Because when people search me, when they search me for certain roles, this is what I want them to see. I want them at a glance to see the top areas of specialization that I have, as well as the top highlights of my career that any special projects that I did, anything that will make them say, oh, wow, I want to learn more about that. You don't need to put bullet by bullet, what you did. That's for the previous section here. Okay. So same thing in your experience here, you have your description. This is still not as comprehensive as my resume. It's just my top skill set from that role. And in particular, the skills in that role. Okay. Same thing here. I put a description here, and then you can put your skills. Now, this is a bit older for me. I did not choose to put the full description there. But if you do have that, which you probably will if you have 20 years of experience or more in the same industry, you want to go ahead and list that experience as well as this particular skill set associated with that role. Okay. Education, go ahead and put in your degree if you have one. Licenses and certifications, go ahead and list those. Volunteer experience, go ahead and list those. Your skills. This is something really important that I think a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to, but your top skills. Okay, so LinkedIn offers you an opportunity to list. Oh, and by the way, if you want to edit any of this, it's this little pencil right here for edit. Okay. The skills section though, you want to list the top skills that you, again, want to be known for and that are going to be the skills that you're applying for. Okay. The skills that you're endorsed for. Okay. So another thing, if you don't use LinkedIn very much, you might not have this, but you want to ask for endorsements and you want to endorse other people on LinkedIn. So if you have a whole team of people and you all work, in project management, you want to endorse each other for project management and you want to have that listed on your profile as a top skill because other people have vouched for you in that regard. Okay. Moving down to recommendations, once you get very comfortable with LinkedIn and you start using it, these become really great to have if you can ask folks that you work with to give you some recommendations. Languages that you speak. So I speak fluent Greek as well as English. So I went ahead and put that on there. It looks good to have, any languages that you may speak. And that's pretty much it for the profile. I like to pause here. Any questions so far on anything that I mentioned on LinkedIn? No questions?
Well, I have a question. Yeah. It kind of relates to the resume too. My LinkedIn is a mess right now. I work at a hospital for the past 16 years and they've changed names, but I've also had multiple roles there. How would you do that? Either LinkedIn and the resume?
Great question. Awesome question. So first of all, with several roles in the same company, you can absolutely list them on your LinkedIn in this manner. So you can even see here as an example, with this particular company, I was promoted a couple times. So I went ahead and listed it, and LinkedIn has a feature where it shows all of that experience under one company. Now, if you search that hospital that you worked at on LinkedIn, I don't know if you know this, but if the new one should pop up on LinkedIn as the new name. And if it does, that's great. It should be there. And then when you click the actual company, the company will pop up. And then the company, if they change names, hopefully that company actually puts that in the profile that, oh, we changed our name. We previously were known as this. And then in the same vein on your resume, you can also, next to the name of the company, and I'm happy to go back to the resume and show you, but next to the name of the company, you can go ahead and put previously known as the old company. I think that that's going to be sufficient, because especially if it's a very big name and the company was very well known beforehand. Yeah, I think that you can definitely include it on the resume. But on LinkedIn, there should be an option to put that new name on there. Does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-ups to that?
No, that does answer it. And yeah, I just unmuted it. They did update it. So I should be able to pull the new hospital name. Just wasn't sure. But I think the same thing happened with my grad school. They switched names. And so I did have to put formally, like in parentheses, just so it was most up to date in case someone was going to search for where I went to school.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead and put formally if there's, a name change, whether it's your education or your job experience, definitely do that. Again, yeah, you don't need to put like when any details. It's just, just put formally in the name. And then for LinkedIn should be relatively straightforward, because most of I had the same thing happen in the company that I work for now. They changed their name a few months ago, but they were able to go ahead and they have a brand new brand on LinkedIn of the new company. If your company doesn't have that, then go ahead and put the old one. But as long as you keep it the same. So I would say just keep it consistent across your resume and your LinkedIn. So whatever you put on your resume as the name, make sure you're also putting that on your LinkedIn as the name, if that makes sense. So don't mix the two. Just make sure that whatever you do, just keep it consistent. Any other questions? Great question, by the way. That's a very, very good one. No other questions? All right, cool. Let me go back here to presentation. Some best practices for LinkedIn. Sorry, I'm just moving around my screen a little bit. So some top tips that I would say for LinkedIn are to use first person in the bio section. We already went over that. And then also engage with other posts and share content. All right. So a lot of people, including myself, I mean, I have to get a lot better at this. I don't really do a lot of sharing on my own on LinkedIn. I do engage with other posts a lot. Like if a coworker got a promotion, or if a former colleague, does something or posts something, I really always try to interact. But engaging with other posts is really important. Okay. So definitely try to do that. Congratulate people, comment on different posts. If you have something great to share in your industry that you're in, go ahead and share that on your LinkedIn and say, here's a great article written by so-and-so, or here's what happened today at, this center or something. If you work at a particular place, use hashtags. Okay. Use the hashtags, do these things, because the more you share and the more you engage, the more your profile is getting seen and it's being shared across the site. So recruiters and people who are on LinkedIn will see that, and then they'll click your profile and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's great, right? And if you're active, it's just you're going to show up more often on LinkedIn on feeds. Okay. Keywords, 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 keywords. This is so important. The same thing as your resume, keywords. Okay. So while I don't recommend copy pasting your resume to LinkedIn, you definitely want to keep it a little more concise on LinkedIn. Keep the keywords though, very important, because recruiters are now also running LinkedIn profiles through a system, which is crazy to think about, but they are using LinkedIn profiles when they're searching. Okay. So keywords are very important. So again, if you're a high-level executive and you have very specific skills, put that in. Put that in your About Me section, put it in the experience section, use the keywords. And then we already walked through all of this, but just make sure that you have that all added in. Okay, this is what I recommend. Professional experience, put information there, education, your certs, all of that. We already went through that, but just make sure you actually have it on your profile. Okay, cool. So that's it. That's all I have. I think, we have about, 5 minutes left. I would love to stick around if anyone has any additional questions on anything. I'm happy to talk through it. If you have private questions that you want to ask me, you can go ahead and email me. This is my email right here. And I'm also going to put it in the chat in case you want it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining tonight. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned a few things. Yeah, but I'm here for a few more minutes if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, let's see if we have any more questions.
So regarding keywords for LinkedIn, do you have any recommendations? Like, I guess on the resume, the keywords would be tailored for each job, but LinkedIn, if it's going to be more generic, I guess, are you just trying to use the shotgun method and just spatter a bunch of keywords in there that fit, or what?
Great question. So for the LinkedIn, you'll want to keep, it's going to be similar to your resume in the sense that you're including the keywords for the roles that you're applying for. With LinkedIn, I would say keep the keywords of the skills that you have for sure, right? The skills that you have and that you want to be noticed for. And I would say not necessarily shotgun, but keep the keywords that you have that are related to your experience. And then if there are particular skills that you want, as a general rule of thumb, keep the keywords on there that you want to be noticed for the most. So let's just say I'm a recruiter and I'm looking for project managers, right? Keep project management on your LinkedIn because that recruiter is going to get to see your profile if you have it in your profile. Resume is a little more specific because I am applying for this particular job. And so there's another added filter there. So definitely tailor it if you can a little bit more. But I would say generally your keywords are going to look very similar. You're not going to have totally different keywords from one or the other. LinkedIn, you don't want to change it every single day, right? You want to keep it to like the role that you actually have and the work that you're doing. So keep it the same. But I would, again, depending on the role that you're really trying to get, that's what I would tailor your keywords for. So if you're really looking to land a program manager role, for example, really keep your keywords related to that particular role. And that goes for both. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Any other questions? Great questions today, everyone. This was fantastic. Really good questions.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I just want to thank you, Eliana, for joining us here at Ella Johnson Library. And thank you, everybody who joined in on this workshop. And this will be on our YouTube channel, and you can find the link on our Facebook in the next week. So thanks so much. We hope you all have a great night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.